They thought that with fake HOA fees they would blackmail me. They went so far that they demolished my yacht, which was the last keepsake of my late father. But they forgot one thing. This entire marina is my property, and when I put the truth in front of everyone, their whole HOA empire collapsed in the blink of an eye. Come, I will tell you the whole story. When you grow up near the water, the ocean doesn't feel like a place. It feels like home. My father was a sailor. He wasn't a rich man, but he was honorable, loyal, and loving. His last keepsake with me was a yacht, an old but strong ship named Aurora. For me, it wasn't about wealth or display. It was heritage. In every crack of the wood, every old stain, there were memories of our journeys. I had tied the yacht at the marina near my apartment. It wasn't a fancy place, but for me it was sacred. After a hard day's work, I would sit on Aurora's deck in the evening and listen to the sound of the waves. In those moments, I felt closest to my father. Then the HOA arrived. At first, it was small things. Notices about cutting the grass and rules about paint on the walls. But soon they started making demands that had nothing to do with them. One day a letter came. Your yacht is subject to HOA dock fees. Failure to pay will result in removal of the yacht. At first I laughed. Dock fees? The marina didn't belong to the HOA. I knew that well. But they didn't back down. The letters grew harsher. Late fees, fines, threats of demolition. I went to the next HOA meeting, the letter in my hand. Listen, this is a mistake. The marina is not HOA property. The HOA president, a sharp-tongued woman named Margaret, straightened her glasses and said with sarcasm, Sir, everything in this community falls under our jurisdiction. Pay the fees or face the consequences. Whispers filled the hall. Some people looked ashamed. Some were laughing. My heart raced. This yacht is my father's keepsake. It's not junk. It's my property. My voice trembled. Margaret replied coldly, The law is the law. Either pay or lose the yacht. I stormed out. My heart was pounding. I thought they were only trying to scare me. No HOA would go that far. But I was wrong. 2 weeks later, I came home from work and heard the sound of cutters and machines. My heart jumped into my throat. I ran toward the dock, and there, a demolition crew was standing there. Chains, sparking tools. My yacht, Aurora, was being torn apart, I screamed. I begged them to stop. But Margaret stood on the dock, arms crossed, smiling. We warned you, she said. The sound of the wood breaking felt like my father's memories were being shattered before my eyes. I fell to my knees. Helpless, I watched as Aurora was destroyed. At that moment, I thought everything was over. But Margaret had made a mistake that would become her downfall. She thought I was just another homeowner, but the truth? I hadn't rented the dock. I owned the entire marina, and that meant the HOA had destroyed my property, on my land. That night I could not sleep. Images kept replaying before my eyes. Aurora's broken planks, the pieces floating on the water, and Margaret's poisonous smile. My father's keepsake, the comfort of my soul, the only refuge of my memories. Everything had been destroyed, but in one corner of my heart a flame was burning. That flame reminded me I was not helpless. I owned the marina. They had trampled my legal right. The next day I pulled out all the documents. Registration papers, records of marina ownership, and tax receipts. Everything was perfectly clear. The marina was not HOA property. It was entirely mine, and demolishing Aurora was a direct attack on me. When the news spread, the neighborhood erupted. Some neighbors came to me and expressed sorrow. We are sorry, said an elderly woman. That woman is very cruel. We all suffer from her harshness. Some others passed by silently. Fear showed on their faces. They knew if they stood with me, the HOA would come down on them too. But not everyone was like that. Some people even praised Margaret. Rules are the same for everyone, one man said. If you didn't pay the fees, this was the result. I gave a bitter smile. I wished they knew the real truth. I contacted a lawyer. When I showed him all the files, he looked at me in surprise. This is straightforward malicious action, he said. The HOA not only exceeded its authority, but also destroyed your private property. We can file a major case against them. Hearing that filled me with new life, but I knew filing a court case alone would not be enough. Margaret was clever. She could bend the law to her advantage. I decided to break her pride first. At the next meeting, I burst through the door. Everyone was startled. Anger burned in my eyes, but my voice was calm. I threw a file on the table. These are the documents proving marina ownership. This place is mine, not yours. You destroyed my father's keepsake, and you committed this crime on my own plot. Silence fell in the room. Margaret tried to hide her eyes behind her glasses, but her breathing betrayed her. I stepped forward and said, "This is not just a mistake. This is a criminal act. I will drag you all to court. And believe me, this time no rule book will save you." For a moment, I thought she might back down. She did not. Margaret stood up, slammed her hand on the table, and said arrogantly, "Don't try to intimidate us. This community is under our control. Go to court if you want, but meanwhile, your name will be spoken like a traitor. We will show everyone you are the troublemaker, not us." Murmurs ran through the crowd. Some nodded with Margaret. Some sat silent. I smiled. Fine, let the game begin. In the following days, the HOA made my life miserable. Every day a new notice, a new accusation. Sometimes they said my lawn was too large. Sometimes they said a car was parked wrongly. Sometimes they levied fictitious fees. These were all pressure tactics to make me bow. But I responded. To every notice under the law, I challenged every fee. I recorded every threat by mail. Because I knew in court these would all become evidence against them. At night, when I looked at the damaged marina from my balcony, my heart ached. But my father's voice came back to me. "Son, never bow before injustice. Remember, the sea stands with the brave." Those words became my weapon. Each day I rose with renewed resolve. I did not only want justice, I wanted my dignity back. Weeks passed, and a neighbor came to me anxious. "I want to show you something, but don't mention my name." He handed me a file. When I opened it, my eyes widened. It was the HOA fund record. It clearly showed Margaret and her close group transferring community funds into personal accounts. Millions were missing. A small smile touched my lips. This was no longer just my case. Now it was the whole neighborhood's problem. I decided then. I would fight not only for my yacht, but for the entire neighborhood. I gave all the files to my lawyer. We prepared the case. Margaret had no idea her greed would be her undoing. Aurora's wreckage still floated on the water. But now that wreckage reminded me not of weakness, but of strength, as if the sea were saying, "Now is the time for revenge." My case was no longer limited to papers alone. I had found evidence of irregularities in the HOA funds. This game was not just about destroying my yacht. These people were looting the entire neighborhood. I knew I had to bring all this to light when the time came, but I could not rush. I began quietly gathering more evidence. The HOA realized I was not someone who would give up easily. They started new tactics. They shut off my gate code so I could not bring my car in. They posted my name on the board as a defaulter for everyone to see. A few days later, they even changed the locks on my mailbox. These were all small attacks, but their single purpose was to drag my honor through the mud. But through it all, I noticed one thing. The more they acted against me, the more people turned toward me. Some slowly came to me and said, "We are tired too. We are just scared." One evening, a small crowd gathered outside the community hall. The HOA had posted a new announcement there. Every resident must pay an additional community management fee. Failure to pay will result in property seizure. People were stunned. This fee was completely illegal. I stepped forward and said loudly, "This is fraud. The HOA has no right to collect this fee. They are stuffing your money into their own pockets." Margaret appeared immediately, waving a paper. "This fee is for the improvement of the community. If anyone objects, they will lose the right to live here." Murmurs rose in the crowd. Some people grew angry. One young man said, "We already pay thousands, and now this?" Another woman shouted, "Where will I get money for my children's books?" I seized the moment. "You all see this, right? These people scare and rob us. But remember, I will not sit quiet. I have evidence. Soon the truth will come out in front of everyone." Margaret's face went red. She came near me and said angrily, "If you say one more word, we will seize your property." Hearing that, the crowd grew more furious. That day, the seeds of rebellion were planted in the community's heart for the first time. A few days later, I received a phone call. It was from a member of the HOA board who was considered close to Margaret. His voice was shaking. "I cannot talk long, but listen. You are telling the truth. Funds are being embezzled. Margaret threatened us too that if we did not stay silent, she would fine us." I told him, "If you stand with me, we can save the community. But I will need your statement." He hesitated, then said, "I am willing. Just hide my name until the right time." This was my second major piece of evidence. I dug deeper and discovered the attack on the marina was not personal revenge alone. Margaret and her friends wanted to seize the marina land to build a private club there. This plan had been made beforehand, so my yacht was only an excuse. The real target was my land. Knowing this set a fire inside me. You broke my father's keepsake to fill your pockets? Now I will show you the true cost. I decided not to keep the matter quietly in court. I gave the evidence to the local newspaper. When the reporter saw the fund records, he immediately said, "This is a major scandal. We will run it on the front page." A few days later, the headline read, "HOA funds embezzled. Serious allegations against the president." The whole neighborhood was in an uproar. Those who had been sitting in fear now had courage on their faces. Under that pressure, Margaret made a decision that proved disastrous for her. She called an emergency community meeting intending to prove me false in front of everyone. The hall was packed. Margaret began her speech. "This person, this traitor, is misleading you all. He has made false accusations against us. We removed his yacht only according to the rules." I quietly turned on a large screen. Everyone's eyes fixed on it. On the screen were the same files, transactions, fake receipts, and Margaret's signatures. The hall erupted. People shouted, "Where did our money go? Give us answers!" Margaret screamed in anger. "This is all fake! This is a conspiracy!" But then the board member who had called me stood up. He said, "This is all true. I testify. Margaret threatened us and put the funds into her own pockets." The room exploded. People began shouting at Margaret. Some demanded her resignation. Margaret had made her greatest mistake. She tried to prove me false before everyone and ended up standing amid the evidence of her own theft. After that day, everything changed. The community stood with me. People began telling each other, "We need to get rid of her. She is our enemy, not our leader." My lawyer strengthened the case. The media printed new stories daily. Margaret was isolated, but she was stubborn and still unwilling to step down. I knew the final strike remained. And that final strike would be the one that ended the HOA forever. Media, community, and the courts were now all moving in the same direction. Mountains of evidence had piled up against the HOA. Still, my heart could not be satisfied until I made them taste the same humiliation they had given me. In the courtroom, the atmosphere was solemn. Margaret and I sat facing each other. When the judge opened the case, my lawyer presented the details. My client is the sole owner of this marina. The HOA had no right to intervene there. They not only destroyed his private property, but also perpetrated large-scale corruption in the funds. Then all the evidence was displayed on the screen. Bank transactions, fake receipts, and the video of the demolition team tearing my yacht apart while Margaret stood there smiling. When that video played, tears came to my eyes. Yet I also felt a calm inside because now the injustice was exposed for all to see. Margaret tried to offer her defense. "This is all false propaganda against me. I worked for the community's improvement." But the judge raised a hand and said, "Enough. The evidence speaks for itself." The court announced its decision. The HOA was fined millions of rupees. Margaret and her accomplices were charged with fraud. Compensation was awarded for the marina and my destroyed yacht. Tears flowed from my eyes uncontrollably. These were not tears of weakness, but of victory. After the court's decision, the community celebrated. People came to me and embraced me. "You saved our lives," one young man said. "Now we are free from their tyranny." An elderly woman said, "The community unanimously dissolved the HOA. Now everyone made decisions together. No intimidation, no lies." But my personal revenge was still left. I put up a large sign at the marina. It read, "This marina is permanently closed to the HOA. Entry prohibited." When Margaret and her group passed by and saw that sign, their faces went pale. The place they had wanted to seize was now forever closed to them. Months later, I decided not to let the remains of Aurora go to waste. I built a new ship. I named it Aurora 2. At its launch, the whole neighborhood gathered. Children clapped with joy, and elders offered prayers. Standing on the deck, I said, "This is not just mine. It belongs to all of us. It is a symbol that we will not bow before any injustice." People cheered, "Freedom! Freedom!" In that moment, I felt as if my father was smiling somewhere. The HOA had destroyed my yacht. They thought crushing one man would be easy, but they did not realize that when a person stands for what is right, an entire community stands behind him. Margaret had taken pride in her power, and in the end, that pride became her ruin. And me? I not only reclaimed my dignity, but also revived my father's legacy. Now when I stand on the deck of Aurora the Two and watch the waves, my heart says, some memories never die. They only return in a new form.